Hey there, and welcome. Today we're jumping right into an explorer's journey. We're going to master how we talk about travel and time, navigating through the past to tell some really cool stories. So let's get started.
All right, here's our expedition map for today. First, we're going to gear up with the right vocabulary. Then we'll learn to read the maps of time with a really important grammar point. After that, we'll take a look at some famous journeys from history. And finally, we'll put our new skills to the test with a final quest.
Okay, part 1. Gearing up for adventure. You know, every explorer needs the right equipment. And for us, that means having the right words to talk about how we get from A to B.
So, let's build our toolkit. To talk about any kind of journey, whether it's a quick trip downtown or a voyage around the world, we need the right words. Let's look at some essential vocabulary for transport.
Let's run through these. For travel on land, you've got your everyday stuff like a bicycle, a bus, or a car. For bigger trips, maybe a train or a tram. And historically, people used a horse or even a camel. Now, up in the air, we've got the plane and the helicopter. For some really big adventures, there's a spacecraft or even a cool old-school airship. And of course, on the water, you can take a boat, a big ship, or even dive deep in a submarine. Getting these down is the first step to telling great travel stories.
Now that we've got our gear, let's move on to Section 2, Mapping the Past. This is where we learn how to navigate time when we're telling stories, which is absolutely crucial for any explorer.
So, here's a little puzzle for you. Imagine you're telling a story where two things happened in the past, right? But one happened before the other. How do you make that super clear to your listener? Well, let's check out an example.
Take a look at this sentence about Marco Polo. There are two actions here, both in the past. He returned to Venice, and he had traveled 24,000 kilometers. The way the sentence is built tells us exactly which one came first.
And the special tool we use for this is what we're going to call the explorer's tense. Now, its official name is the past perfect. And trust me, it's your secret weapon for telling clear, amazing stories about things that have already happened. Here's the key. We use the past perfect to talk about an action that was finished before another action in the past. And the structure, it's so simple. You just use the word had plus the past participle of a verb. You know, like had traveled, had seen, or had done. This timeline makes it crystal clear. The traveling was the earlier past event, so we use the past perfect. He had traveled. His return to Venice happened later in the past, so we just use the simple past. He returned. It's a neat little way to organize time.
All right, let's put this into practice. In Section 4, we're going to look at the journeys of some other famous explorers and see just how this grammar helps bring their stories to life.
Just think about Marco Polo's huge journey by land. By the time he actually saw China, he had already crossed vast deserts. Or what about Amelia Earhart? Before she even attempted to fly around the world, she had already become the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic. Their incredible stories are all built on events that happened in a very specific order, and that's why our explorer's tense is so important. And that brings us to our final quest. It's time to put your new knowledge to the test. I'm going to ask a few questions about some famous explorers, so let's see if you can nail the answers. Ready? Let's kick things off with Marco Polo again. I mean, this guy went on an incredible 24-year journey, seeing places that most Europeans had only heard of in legends.
So, think back to our example. By the time he finally got back to Venice, how far had Marco Polo traveled? Was it A, 4,000, B, 14,000, or C, 24,000 kilometers?
And the answer is C, 24,000 kilometers. Just listen to that sentence again. By the time he returned, he had traveled. The past perfect just locks that sequence of events in place perfectly.
Okay, our next explorer wasn't traveling on land or by sea, he was headed for the stars. Let's talk about Yuri Gagarin, the very first human to go to space.
Now, here's a question for you. When he stepped onto that spacecraft for his historic flight, was flying a completely new thing for him? The answer is no, not at all. He was an experienced pilot. He had flown in a plane hundreds of times before that day, but he had never flown in a spacecraft. See how the past perfect clearly shows us the experience he had right up until that big moment? And last but not least, let's talk about the incredible aviator Amelia Earhart. She broke records and inspired millions with her absolute courage. Her most famous journey, of course, was her attempt to fly around the entire world in 1937. Tragically, her plane disappeared. Do you happen to know which ocean this happened over? Was it A, the Atlantic,
B, the Pacific, or C, the Indian?
The correct answer is B, the Pacific Ocean. Her disappearance is still one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries, a story that still fascinates us to this day.
So, let's wrap this up. What are the key takeaways? Well, we've built up our vocabulary for transport, and we've mastered the past perfect tense. Just remember that simple structure, had plus the past participle. And just like that, you've got the tools to tell much clearer, more powerful stories about the past.
And to finish up, here's one last thought for you. Think about your own learning journey today. Before you watch this explainer, what had you already learned about the past perfect tense? It's kind of cool to see how we build on what we already know, one step at a time. Thanks for exploring with us today.